This is the Dallas Prospect Live with DDP. Every legend was once a prospect. The Dallas Prospect is funded by viewers like you through Patreon and PayPal. To support the show, visit patreon.com/the Dallas Prospect or become a member by clicking the join button. Now let the show begin.
We are in the future, or at least in present day, I guess would be a better way of putting it. I am DDP, joined on this momentous Memorial Day by my dude, Ennie Nduka. Ennie, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, sir. How you doing?
Doing well as I fine-tune these settings. It's a blast from the past. We're in the olden days of Dallas Prospect here, operating through OBS. Because Restream is a bitch and they're not getting my money. That's all I'm going to say. So, thank you everybody for joining us here. We're operating in a little bit of a different setup here, but we'll get these wrinkles ironed out in due time. In the meantime, we got some good shit to talk about. We got a commanding 3-0 series lead in the Western Conference Finals. Ennie, be honest, did you think we would be here? You don't have to answer. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead and answer.
No, I mean, look, we can circle back to the preview podcast that we did. And what did I say? I said, what, either Wolves in 7 or something like that, or Wolves in 6, or I don't know. But as we were, going through the podcast, it's just like, we just started like, you know what? At the end, we're like, this is not as bad as we think. This matchup isn't as bad. But I would venture to say, we both of us did not envision being up 3-0 going into Game 4. And it's quite the surprise. And, sometimes, in life, me and you, I think we deserve to have surprises like this. So, yay us.
We do deserve good things in life. That is true.
We're both good people.
We've gone through the hard times. We've gone through the suffering. We've earned this, I feel. Almost as much as the team. No.
Yeah, especially after what happened last year.
Yeah.
Like, we deserve this.
Yeah. So, first in the house, we got TGK. What's good? TGK says, hitting the tagline, love it. Every legend was once a prospect, and OBS is clutch, he says. Came in the clutch here, even if I had to fight through some, 2 years old settings and this extremely old stream layout.
Hey, you know what? We got the podcast out. Mavericks are up 3-0. They're essentially on their way to, barring any crazy collapses, on their way to the NBA Finals. It has to be really crazy. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, they haven't done it before, or whatever, hasn't been done. But for the Timberwolves to beat the Mavericks, it's not only that they have to win 4 games in a row. They have to beat a team 4 times in a row, and that team is coming off a 5-game win streak in the playoffs.
Yeah. And they've won how many of their last 10? Because before we were saying it was 8 of 10, so now it's 9 of their last 11 overall.
Yeah. So
yeah, this team is exactly who we said they were. Going into the playoffs, we said people talking about look at their strength of schedule down the stretch. Dude, look at the roster they had before the stretch. Look at what the composition of this team was. This is not that team. This is the entire complexion of this team is different, and this is a legitimate real deal team. In games in which they were healthy and actually trying to win, going for it, their record was obscene down the stretch. And you looked at that win percentage and you correlated it out over the course of the year. And again, we're going from a sample size of 30, so less than half the season, obviously, but still a sizable sample. And it would have been, a top 3 in the West at that point? Because, again, you had that log jam between 1 and 3. So just absolutely insane what this team was. And you still had people that didn't want to believe it because it's the same people that have criticized and dismissed Dallas every step of the way. And
Well,
they're
the people who did it.
begrudgingly starting to come around now. You got content
Shout out.
creators who have always
Shout out Keyshawn.
been downplaying Dallas in their YouTube videos, their breakdowns and all that. And you almost can hear the pain in their voice as they're having to talk about why Dallas is suddenly like this unstoppable force and all of that. And I love it. I love seeing them suffer after years of kicking shit in our face for no reason.
Yeah, shout out Keyshawn Johnson, who finally just admitted on his show on Fox Sports 1 that Luka is that guy. And he's been a Luka hater for a long time, but I guess to him now it's undeniable of Luka's greatness. So,
Yep.
you know, I wish I had got paid millions of dollars to, you know, say what I think and give out takes and whatever, but you know, it's not a perfect world, and
Sure.
so you have to take what you can get, and sometimes we're stuck with guys who there is no real reason how they got to the places that they got. I know Keyshawn Johnson was a very I guess he was a good NFL wide receiver or whatever. I don't know how we got to the point of him talking NBA basketball. But you know, him finally coming around on the 27th day of this month of May to finally coming around just acknowledging how good Luka Doncic is at the game of basketball. And we were finally here. But yeah, man, like what was it? Sunday night? Great night. I actually changed up. Now, this is something that I wanted to ask you too. So in 2011, I made a lot of memories of watching these games in public spaces.
Sure.
Right. 2022. Did I do that? I went to one spot when they clinched the first round. And I think after that, I was just watching it at home. And so I told myself, is like, let me go out more. Let me be amongst the people so that, you know, when ish goes down, I will be amongst fellow Mavs fans.
Yep.
And it was a good time, man. I went to a big sports bar here in Dallas for last night's game. And, you know, it was a very fine experience watching the Mavericks close it out, even though at a certain time it seemed a little dicey, even though it still felt like Mavericks still had control.
Yep.
But when we closed it out, it was fun. So looking to do that more, man, and hopefully looking to do that all the way up to for 5 more wins.
Yep.
So yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this game here, because there's plenty to dive into, right? Like it's your first game of the Western Conference Finals at home. You've got the 2-0 lead. You're coming in knowing you're going to get maybe the most. I think you could certainly make the case this is the most desperate shot you were going to get from Minnesota. That's not to say that they still can't get you, especially now with injury situation we'll get into in a minute. But no team has ever come back from down 3-0. I think last year in the East Finals, you had a team down 3-0, at least force a Game 7, which even that's pretty rare.
Celtics did that against the Heat. Yep.
So
it was the don't let us get one or whatever. So
yeah.
One after the other.
Yep. So it was absolutely going to be their most desperate shot. And you could kind of feel that going in. Anthony Edwards saying, you know, shoot around that morning, like calling his shot essentially that he was going to be way more aggressive. He was going to attack the basket, and he was going to basically try to step up and drag them where they needed to go. And yet coming out, it really felt almost from the jump like Dallas was just in control. Like Derek Lively was having a huge impact right from the jump with this, not just getting the dunks, not just blocking shots, not just dunking on Gobert, but getting offensive rebounds and stuff, getting assists, again, finding the right thing when
navigating the short roll.
Yes. Minnesota blitzing, him getting that short roll, finding the shooter. He kicked it to Green at one point for that free throw line extended 3 there. Love that. Just great playmaking from Dallas. And then it got a little dicey because even though Dallas was leading by 5 after the first quarter, we get an interesting couple of plays where in the span of about a minute of game time, We get a Karl-Anthony Towns knee to the groin for Derek Lively, which somehow is upheld as like the knee is part of the shooting motion on a fadeaway, maybe. Like he was fading that knee straight into the nutsack of Derek Lively here, and we're gonna call that a foul.
I'm trying to go through my years of playing basketball to really think. Going up for a floater or a layup, do you typically lead with a knee?
No.
Okay, so I'm not crazy. All right, cool.
A runner, maybe like if you're shooting like a runner, maybe. But even then, if you're leading with the knee and the contact is your knee into a vertical body, it would be a foul on you. You can't say like, oh, the arms came down because I drove my knee into his midsection. Like, yeah, no, you fouled him, and then that made his arms come down and foul you. Like,
yeah,
that was one of those things. Like, you knew you had Tony Brothers again. You knew you had a sus officiating crew, and it was Tony Brothers' apparently 200th career playoff game. And so you're like, oh, good, we have an occasion now for him to really want to take center stage. And in typical fashion, he did. He found ways to put himself front and center. And,
even Kendrick Perkins tweeted about it, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah, he was like, Tony Brothers always making it about him.
Yep,
like,
absolutely. And that's the thing is like, if there's a particular crew or head official who every single game they officiate, you are fully aware of it, and you find yourself saying like, boy, that guy's getting a lot of screen time, that's probably a sign they're not doing a good job. A good official, you really shouldn't know their name. You really shouldn't know their reputation. It should just be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, this guy's done this many games. I don't really know who he is, so he must be pretty good, at least pretty fair and neutral, not a spectacle or an attention seeker. But as I said, so you had the Karl-Anthony Towns knee to the nuts for Derek Lively, and then just a minute later of game time, you get a very scary play there. Dude, being someone who had his share of concussions playing high school basketball, including, well, this one was actually middle school. I had 2 in 8 days at one point. One of those, man, that was like, for me, like that was very surreal, because I was just like, oh, I've been there. I've been the guy knocked down in a collision, and then somebody else's knee smashes you either in the temple or the back of the head, and you never see the hit coming. And I was very, very worried there immediately about Lively. Not just for the sake of like, obviously like, oh, well, yeah, he's not going to come back in this game, but also like, what does this mean for the rest of this series? What does this mean, if Dallas assumingly does advance, what does that mean for that? Because concussions, there's just not really a book you can follow with that. Like the severity of the concussion, any history of concussions, anything like that. Like one dude can get a concussion, be back within a couple days, and passing all the tests, everything seems fine, no effects. Another dude can have it, and he can have like headaches, light sensitivity, balance issues. He could have other, just more greater susceptibility to concussions again, even in shots that aren't to the head, but are just that whiplash effect. Like you're trying to crash the boards, for instance, and somebody tries to forearm check you in the chest, but you get enough of a head rock that it reconcusses you. Like it's just a messy, messy business. So I know I keep using the word concussion. They're telling us it's not a concussion protocol situation right now, that it's a sprained neck. And they're still concerned there with me. But when I saw that play, I just immediately was like, oh, man, this could be something that potentially shuts him down for a while. You just never know.
So what's the reports that came out about that, by the way? I know they said we're supposed to get an MRI this morning.
Everything.
I've been out and about this early today, so I haven't seen any updates on it.
Everything that I've seen reported says that they believe he's okay. He's unclear if he's going to play tomorrow, but the eyewitnesses around shoot around this morning say he was kind of like laboring a little bit, getting around like a little, I don't know if unsteady is the right word. Obviously he looked woozy coming off the court, so that was the other thing. I was like, oh yeah, that seems like that's what it is. But you also had just the way he was kind of getting around physically didn't look quite right. And again, if it's a neck strain, then your whole spine is connected, right? So even just the slightest swaying of your head, you're going to be feeling that into your upper back, into your whatever. So if something's like sending a jolt of pain anytime you make the slightest movement, you're probably going to walk pretty rigid. Like that's one of those things. It's these things. I've said this about a lot of injuries we're dealing with right now. It's not really something you can tend it and you can make it a little bit better, but these are the sort of things that kind of just need time, rest, ice, recuperation, all that. You can work on it to get it to a serviceable point, but ideally, you don't activate him again this series because hopefully you can find a way to handle your business in Game 4 as well. But that immediately changed the complexion of this game. I don't care about Reggie Miller and them talking about how the Anthony Edwards dunk in the third quarter changed the attitude of the game. Nah, dude, the game changed with the Lively thing because suddenly Minnesota started getting to the basket at will. Like, I get that Gafford had 5 blocks in Game 2. That's great. He's not the interior presence that Lively is, and it's not the same impact. So the Edwards thing might have been a spark, but the complexion had already changed.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't deny 7'1" with a 7'7" wingspan. Like, that makes a difference. And if you don't have that, you know, the whole construction of your team is completely different because now we have to play a guy like Dwight Powell, who is 6'11" with a 6'11" wingspan.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So 2 inches shorter, 2 inches shorter with a 6-inch difference in wingspan. That presence is essentially not there.
Right.
And we've been seeing it, you know, so for some people, they've been seeing it since, you know, the trades were even made back in February. You know, that ability to have 48 minutes of just pure lob threats, paint protection, hoop, basket, whatever protection. I don't know. I literally can't think of what you're supposed to call it anymore. It makes a huge difference. That was one of the big things that we definitely didn't have in 22, right? That when we got to this point in our run last time, we were getting completely out-rebounded, outplayed by Kevon Looney.
Yeah, God. Yeah, it looked like vintage Wilt Chamberlain against us in that series.
Yeah, exactly, right? But now that we have that kind of paint presence for 48 minutes, let alone we didn't have zilch of it, it makes a big difference. And we definitely saw that. And of the two centers, not to take anything away from Gafford, but it seemed to me that, and a lot of other people who were watching, it seemed to me that Lively was a little bit more effective in what the Mavericks are trying to do.
100%.
Especially when, you know, dealing with the blitzes and stuff like that. It seemed that Lively was able to navigate the short roll a lot more comfortably than Gafford is. Now, that's going to be something that Gafford might have to emphasize. He needs to not rush. He needs to, you know, protect the ball, but at the same time be aggressive, but not be so wild when he does it. You know,
right?
Lively looks a lot more controlled when he decides to go in. Gafford is like, I'm going to get it and I'm going to score and I'm going to take off from like a step and a half inside the free throw line, and whatever happens. We're just like, let's actually read the defense. If they're second in,
you think it's reversed, right? Where Gafford or where Lively is the guy with 5 or 6 years experience, and Gafford is the rookie almost with how they play.
If you didn't know anything about their careers and I just told you, you know, just numbers on the back of a player card, you'll be like, oh, you know, Derek Lively's the dude who's been in the league for how many years versus Gafford, who's a rookie. But no, it's quite the opposite. So yeah, this is going to be a big blow. Pause again to the Mavericks, potentially losing Lively for Game 4, but hopefully not one that's so insurmountable that we will have to find our way back in Minnesota. You know, a lot of people still think that. Despite losing Lively, that the Mavericks, with everything they have, still has what it takes to win Game 4. Especially with Luka essentially coming back to what he was in the regular season. Which, side note, if we had this Luka back in OKC and back in Clippers,
it would have been 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Yeah,
wild. Like, anyway, so they got lucky.
For sure. So
I don't know where ended my plane or landed my plane or not, but go ahead, take over. It's Memorial Day, people.
Yeah. So overall, from this team, they had a good first half. A little bit too many turnovers. I think they had 5 in the first quarter. But they were shooting the three well. You were getting strong performances from Derrick Jones Jr. First half in particular, he was really shooting the ball well. and your role players were giving you enough balance that it's like, okay, Luka, I think Kyrie had 7 in the first quarter. A little more aggressive from him there. But overall, I was really liking everything I was seeing, except for the whole thing with Lively happening. That really made me. That was the first thing in this series where I was like, and here's some pause for me. I think we're capable of winning this game. We better win this game because you don't want to let them off the mat knowing he's probably out. Like you need to put them down where they're like complete backs against the wall. Not knowing what it's going to be with him, but you got to put him in that 3-0 hole at this point because otherwise the entire series changes quickly. So Dallas coming out and like you said, really kind of controlling things, staying in check. I think they had like a 10 or 12 point lead at the half. Does that sound about right? All this kind of blurs together in the mid part of the game because it really almost to me felt like a case of 2 different games. But everything reignites in that third quarter with the play, and this is understandably so. I get why the dunk is being played 100 times. It's a phenomenal play from Anthony Edwards, posterizing Gafford. Absolutely looks like he just elevates to a new dimension before bringing the hammer down. Incredible.
And doing anything. Yeah.
Incredible. But at the same time, yes, it does spark a Minnesota run. They even managed to grab, I think, as much as a 4-point lead. And when they finally took that lead, it was their first lead since like 5-3, I think they said. So it had been a minute since they had been in that position. And then you're kind of like, okay, here they are. But as you were saying earlier, you never really felt like they were in control. It never felt like Dallas was like, oh, they're pulling away and Dallas is the one falling back now. You had a different sense of it. You want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, it goes from, for me, watching the Mavericks for a long time, especially in this Luka era. You can kind of sense. I think I was on a We Talk Mavs podcast, and I was mentioning it to them. It's like there are times where when you're watching the Mavericks and you see them at their, like when they're collapsing.
Yeah.
Right. And you can kind of, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I'm going to say it. Don't be mad at me.
I'm going to be mad. I feel it.
You remember that congressional hearing or whatever, when they were talking about porn? It's like, you can't describe it. You just know it when you see it. It's kind of like that collapse when you watch the Mavericks. Like nothing is going right for them. Luka's turning the ball over. We can't get rebounds. People are like losing. Like,
it's a total loss of composure.
Yeah. And it is like very frustrating. Like very routine things are not going their way.
Right.
That wasn't the case for the Mavericks. It was just like they might have missed a shot or two or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Wolves will come back and they'll make it. Like when the Wolves make a big run, like when you were watching them versus Denver, it was like they get a bucket, they get a live ball turnover, bucket, live ball turnover again, bucket. Where it was like the Mavericks are like, okay, we're just missing shots. We're still getting all the shots we want. We're not working that hard to get the shots. We're just missing them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like our role players are missing them. But it's like, okay, when we can just have Luka take a shot or Kyrie take a shot and they'll make a basket. And it's like, okay, it was like a 6-2 run. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I hate it when people say it's a 6-2 run. It's like, that's not a run. It just the flow of the game at that particular point in time.
Right.
But yeah, I never felt like the game was lost. Even when it was 4, when we were down by 4 in the fourth, I was just like, in my brain, I was like, this really, as of right now, way too much time. And we got Luka and Kyrie. And I know a lot of people are seeing this now, but you cannot overlook the fact that having both Luka and Kyrie in a close game with that level defense that they have on the other side with PJ and Derek Jones Jr. and Gafford or Lively, and then Cleveland when he eventually comes back.
Looks like he's getting close, by the way.
Yeah, what was that?
It looks like he's getting close, by the way. He was participating in shooting today.
Yeah. Those stacked up against with each other is a major concoction of clutch basketball. Like we got the closers to close the game out.
Right.
and we got the defense to get the stops.
Yeah.
Right. Where it used to be, we only had that guy. So maybe we will luck into a couple of stops at the end. And then we'll have him in position for Luka to do something crazy and like some weird floater from the 3-point line against Memphis.
Right.
And that thing eventually it miraculously goes in.
Just
or
Luka magic moments.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's just like, oh, Luka makes a routine bucket, something that he's been doing the whole game. They try to, score, and Derek Lively or blocks it, or PJ Washington plays great defense, but it's like great routine for him or routine for Derek Jones. It's not anything like crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the difference between what we've seen and what we're seeing now is like the good plays, especially on the defensive end, are so routine.
Right.
Whereas, oh, that guy made a play. Thank God he made, and we're like replaying it amongst Mavs Twitter, like, look at this play, where it's just like nowadays is just good defense.
Yeah. Yep.
Nothing super crazy. Just forcing misses, we're getting rebounds.
Yep.
And then giving it to our two guys to close the game. That's why, if it's close, really, to me, I could be wrong. People probably feel different. People who are probably haven't watched the Mavericks as much as you and I and other people have watched them, will probably feel like, oh man, they lost. As soon as Ant got that dunk, you can feel the momentum shift. It was like, it was a very emphatic dunk. It made our crowd even ooh and ah.
Yep.
But and then he made a couple buckets after that. But I was just like, I wasn't worried. I wasn't panicked in the slightest.
I was much more worried last round when SGA would loop together 3 or 4 of those in a row, because it literally felt like he would not miss.
That's different, because like that's what he does. And the Mavericks collapse game 4 against OKC. I definitely felt that game falling apart.
Yeah. And it was free throws. It was not being able to get those stops on SGA. Like Edwards, as great as he was, even last night, he was 11 of 24 overall. 0 of 2 from 3. Like, it didn't have the same feeling of that. SGA was shooting, and you're like, dude, I just don't think he's gonna miss. And if he did miss, you're like, oh shit, he missed.
Yeah, like we gotta take advantage of that.
Exactly.
And even when Luka went up, even when Luka got fouled for the and went to the line with a potential game tying, I still felt, I was like, I don't think he's gonna make both of these for some reason today and our day.
Yep.
And he went ahead and missed he missed the first one.
Missed the first, made the second.
Yeah, I was like, well, there we go. Like,
it
just didn't feel good.
Yeah.
It's all a feeling with me.
Yeah.
And I haven't felt that this series at all. I felt like for the vast majority of this series, weirdly enough, the Timberwolves have had the lead for the vast majority of the series. But I feel like to me, I felt like the Mavericks have always, except for that 18-point deficit at that point in time. Well, but when they closed it to 12, I was like, we back in it. And when they closed it to 3, I was like, we back in it at half.
Yep.
Is rare moments that I felt like we've lost control. I feel like the Mavericks have been in control almost this entire series.
Yeah, they have.
It's a hard thing to
And here's the thing: is like, it does not matter. This is the difference. You already touched on this. The difference is, I don't think these two teams are worlds apart in terms of their overall quality. The difference is the closers. Like you were talking about, like the routine. Now you were talking about it in a defensive sense. That's true. Like the Mavericks defense post trade deadline is much closer to the Wolves than they got credit for a good while. And I think people are now realizing how similar they are, even though the Wolves' historic defense, defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert, who's just getting hunted into oblivion right now. The Wolves threw every type of coverage you could throw at Dallas, particularly at Luka, and it just did not matter in the game. Let me see. I think there was one tweet that I liked that was like, they threw 8 different types of coverages at Luka guarding the pick and roll, and he just mercilessly picked it apart each and every time. So here's one thing. They used drop coverage against him. They came up to the level of the screen. They tried switching. They tried hedge and recover. They tried blitzing. It didn't matter. Like, he answered each and everything they threw at him. And it's like, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can throw at him that he's not. It's one thing just to like understand how to do it, but sometimes a team can kind of disguise what they're doing a little bit. And in the snap, instant judgment and decision you need to make, you can make a guy hesitate and miss the opportunity to counter it the way you need to. Luka's processing things so fast. He's recognizing it before it even gets to him, and then they're just making the right play. And even Kai is doing that to a solid extent as well. So you have two guys that are just, the basketball IQ is so high. Their physical gifts and abilities are so great. It doesn't matter what you do. And like the difference of this, because Dallas closed this game on a 13-3 run, I want to say. They were down 2 with about 5 minutes left, and then they go on a 13-3 run that ices the game, and so you end up winning 116-107. But it's like, in that, Dallas is just going Luka or Kyrie every possession, basically. I know PJ hit a big three. That was Kai feeding him in the corner. But it's like, it doesn't matter what you're throwing at them, because their ability, both of them, for hitting just incredible degree of difficulty shots is unmatched in this series. There's nothing Minnesota can match with that. And so, like, when you're doing everything defensively in your power that you can, you're mixing up your coverages, you're trying to keep them off balance, you're making them work and work and work, but then you get Kai hitting that step back in the corner, not a 3, it's a long 2. You have Luka hitting his spinning, falling away shots in which he's getting fouled, but they're not calling the foul. You just have these shots back to back to back to back, and it's like, it is demoralizing for a defense. I don't care how good your defense is. I don't care how fundamental and tough-nosed you are. It's going to feel like more than just 2 points. It's going to feel like almost 2 buckets, because we're fighting for our lives out there trying to get buckets on the other end. Just to get buckets, not even like those kind of buckets. If any of us, maybe Ant could say he could hit some of those shots once, every now and then, or if he's really cooking, he can hit some of those. Yeah. But the ability to match them pound for pound, hell, matching one of them right now, let alone both of them. That's the difference. These teams, I think, are very, very close. The difference is the closers, and the fact that you got 2 guys that are just not just the 2 best players in the series, but the 2 best difficult shot makers, most talented offensive players in the series. There's just nothing Minnesota can do to match that. Defense,
be able to manipulate the defense way more than any of the players on the Minnesota side. Yep. Like you said, play make. Ant is still learning these, and as much as, and I hate this for Ant, because for me this was probably the best case scenario, because I loved Ant so much. I didn't want to get in that feeling of I hate this guy. You know what I mean? Because he's giving my team such a run for its money. So we're about to come out of this. Hopefully, we're about to come out of this. With this Western Conference Finals, with me still having my admiration for Ant in this game. But we've seen this with so many players. We saw this with Devin Booker. We saw this with Jason Tatum. We saw this with Ja. We saw this with
anointed too early.
Yeah, anointed way too early, way before their time. Shea. Now we're seeing it with Ant, and they're just like. Well, we originally saw it with Trey Young, and it's like, these guys are better than Luka. Right? We saw Kendrick Perkins, who's the best player in the series. It's like, oh, it's Anthony Edwards. It's like, there's still so many things. There's still so many things that one has to figure out in this league. The NBA nowadays is way too good, way too skilled for a 22-year-old to come in. Yeah. And even though he showed you such...
Unless their name is Luka, in which they'll still be all first team.
And for some reason, we've gotten bored with Luka's greatness to a fact that we're like, where's the next guy? Let's try to prop up the next guy. That's
exactly it. That's the only way you get like the Ringer putting out a list of top talents 25 and under, and Luka coming in fourth. It's like... Rookie of the year, and then straight away 5 straight all first teams 2 Western
Exactly.
Conference Finals appearances with drastically different teams, leading the league in scoring, like all these there's no way. It's literally people got voter fatigue about Luka before he ever won a single
Mm,
MVP, and yet they don't have
exactly.
that for Jokic at all. It makes no sense.
Yeah,
It's
they were
because
saying that
Jokic,
on
it's the
we saw.
story. It's the story.
Yeah,
Jokic was a second rounder. People never thought he would be this. Luka came in being promised as the world, is living up to it. And then people are
yeah,
just like, whatever, this is what he was supposed to be. And I still don't think he's that great, really. Like, that's the
yeah.
mentality. It's
And we're
ridiculous.
saying there's way too many people who are just now coming to the realization that Luca is that guy when he's literally been showing us stuff like this since his rookie year. Like I remember distinctly our we were having a podcast of the offseason after Luca's rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying at this point, this is when 2019,
Mm-hmm.
I was saying Luca's already a championship player. He's
Championship caliber for
already,
sure.
yeah, he's already a championship caliber player, right? We've seen him countless times.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say his rookie year, maybe because it was the newness of it, but I felt like he had more moments his rookie year of just like, oh my gosh, than he's had up until this year. Maybe, and that's probably because of the newness factor of it.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, oh, it's Luca, it's Luca. Now, but it's too many people are getting paid way too much to come up with opinions, and they're drawing such wild opinions based on absolutely nothing.
It's because
For a lot of people,
it's not about their knowledge anymore. It's not about their expertise. It's about A, their name brand, and B, their ability to drive engagement and just like conversation, even if it's negative feedback because of how bad it is. There's no way you could tell me the majority of these guys like have earned their spot. The number of times these guys are hilariously, hysterically wrong. It doesn't matter. There's no way
Mhm.
Colin Cowherd has a job today if it came down to being right in your percentages.
I mean, you would think in a perfect world, you would think so, right? This is crazy. We were seeing like people are like, oh, Jalen Brunson. Who was it? Kenny Smith said he would put Jalen Brunson or
Stephen
something.
A.
Oh no, sorry.
Stephen A.
He said he would put Shea and Ant Edwards over Luca for first team
Mhm.
All NBA. It's like how?
Why?
Like
It's because
and
it's the sexier thing. It's the bigger
and Edwards'
market.
stats was rivaling Kyrie, our number 2,
Yeah.
right?
No, I
And
know.
it was like I maybe it's like an entertainment way of driving engagement, exactly what you just said. But it's like, yo, like you can't just be so wrong though. Like you get paid to have essentially no credibility. You're
Yeah.
talking sports, but have no credibility doing it. You're
I-
just entertaining while you're doing it.
It's also it's not just trying to anoint the next wave of superstars to keep things feeling fresh. It's also like a bias towards bigger market teams, which is why like New York, despite their just
True. That's
ineptitude
always
for
been the
so
case,
many
though.
decades, still get all the love anytime they're relevant and good. And they were very good this year.
Well,
But
yeah, no,
the
they
number
were
of years they're very
they were
good
fun
is
too.
usually pretty small in the scheme of like a decade, right? Like
They're the
you might
Dallas
have 2
Cowboys.
years.
They're the Dallas. Well, they're even worse than the Dallas Cowboys of the NBA.
Yeah, speaking of the Cowboys, talking about Anthony Edwards, the idea of like maybe put away the anointing oil. That's not to say that he's not going to be this phenomenal, great player, but stop already talking about him like he's already in that conversation because he's not.
Yeah.
Like this is his first time on the stage. He is at best the third best player in this series right now. Nas Reed's
Yeah.
had a bigger impact on them. And if you ask Reggie Miller, where would they be without Nas Reed? Probably still down 2-0, Reg. Now 3-0. Like, what is this point? Why does he keep bringing this up? I could have
Yeah.
had a drinking game last night and died of alcohol poisoning the number of times he said, where would the Timberwolves be without Nas Reed right now? Probably in the
Yeah.
same situation.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's just very perplexing, honestly. We people in the YouTube game, in the YouTube world, they couldn't do the same thing, and I don't know what kind of accolades or prerequisites that some of these guys have that got them propped up to be in such a position to where it's like, hey, I am so entertainingly wrong, about my take. And I get you want to be different, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm just gonna say things to just not say what everyone else is saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But if you can make it make sense,
Right.
then I can commend you for that opinion, right? If you were to say, I don't know, someone said, despite all these accolades or the hype that Ant Edwards was getting, uh, Maurice from Mavs Outsiders was like, you know what? Shea scares me a lot more offensively than Ant does,
Yeah.
right? It's different than what everyone else is saying,
Sure.
but he can back it up with with what's actually happened
Yeah.
based on, hey, what the Mavericks are doing right now. We're trying to force guys to make tough shots, and Shea was a very tough shot maker,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not at that level yet.
Not yet, but
Ergo,
I see the ability he can get there for sure.
exactly. Ergo, Shea scares me a lot more than Ant does.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm a lot more comfortable with this matchup than I was against the OKC matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people were probably pushing back, but it makes sense. Now, if you're out here saying that Ant is, you know, and some people are just, when they say it, it's almost like they're saying it, and it's like such fact that to question it will be proof of ignorance or something.
Yeah.
They'll be like how can you think that Luka Doncic is a better basketball player than Ant Edwards? It's like, because Luka Doncic has been doing this since he's been 19.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like we're just like Ant is just now doing it. Like Luka, if you gave Luka Ant's team when Luka was 20 years old,
Mm-hmm.
Luka will be in the same. It will be in the same position right now.
Yeah.
I was actually going through this before the playoffs started, and this was one of the things that I did to hype myself up, and I need to do a better job in looking back on this stuff, because it's like everything is coming into fruition. I was looking back on who was going to war with Luka Doncic in those past years we were in the playoffs, and what kind of lineups were we running out in crucial times in the game. Not like we were up in 20, we're up by 20, or it was like Luka, Tim Hardaway, Trey Burke,
Ntilikina.
yeah, it was like we were going to war with 4/5 of the lineup not even in the league or getting playing time anymore.
Yep.
And these are the guys Luka was challenging the great the Clippers teams that were back in those days were actually very formidable, and I would argue some of the most well put together teams. They just had injuries that effed up their momentum.
Well, that's why like the state of like discourse it's not even serious. Like you have people who are like, because right now some people are trying to reignite like the Luka Harden discussion, like because people pushing back against that narrative that Luka was another James Harden type. They're like, no, he's better than Harden ever was. Like is what a lot of people are saying. But you have others who are
their play styles are very similar.
Yeah,
but
similar play styles, but it's also like the mental toughness, mentality, ability to show up in the postseason, put your team on your back.
That's the difference.
But like you'll have those people who are like, Harden just in his prime had to run into the Warriors dynasty and then Warriors with KD. Luka, meanwhile, Warriors post KD got waxed in 5. It's like let's have a broader conversation there. What was Luka's roster? What was Luka's roster when they lost in 5?
Yeah, it's like they have such simplistic views on how they view the game. It's like, there's really not much in this world more complex than sports.
Yeah,
you can't be so reductive in looking at it, right?
Yep.
People are like, oh, James Harden, you can't win playing the James Harden style. It was like, well, if Chris Paul never got injured, and he never injured his hammy, one could argue that James Harden probably would have a ring.
Or if KD doesn't gets his big toe off the line in Brooklyn.
Exactly.
That was the Bucks year they won, and they only got him because of that shot in overtime.
Exactly. James Harden has been close.
Sure.
But and when we're trying to compare the two, yes, James Harden and Luka Doncic's game, both very high level offensive players. The difference between the two, one's a playoff riser, the other one's notorious for blowing
Yeah.
in
Luka.
such spectacular fashion has terrible playoff experiences.
Yeah.
And that's the difference,
Luka
right?
also gets a lot, justifiably so, gets a lot of heat for like the complaining thing, and I agree on a
He
lot of
does.
it. But
Yeah.
he's not a foul merchant in the same way that Harden was, especially in his prime,
Yeah.
um, or that SGA is now. But SGA gets
Hmm.
no, outside of like the team he's playing in that round, gets no heat for it. It seems like. So it's really to me, like the conversation, the comparisons with Harden have diverged more in the last couple of years in particular. I don't even think of them like there's similarity there, but before it was, I think, a closer comparison. Now it's kind of like, hey, he's kind of branched off in his own way, and it's like, to me, his highs are going to be higher than Harden without that baggage and without that stuff that brings into question, his
Hmm.
spot. So, but shifting kind of back to the conversation
Yeah.
of this game here, this series, it's like Dallas, yeah, they're banged up. Lively, that's concerning. We'll
Uh-huh.
see where he's at. I don't anticipate him playing game 4 regardless of what happens. Hopefully that you don't have to go back to Minnesota. I would love to wrap this up, especially because it looks like Boston's going to do the same thing Monday night.
Hmm.
Um, but being in that position and getting that like 10 days of rest is going to be huge for everyone. Lively, Luca, because it's June 6th when
Maxi.
the finals would actually start. So
Sorry. Yep.
that would
Jordan.
be huge to get that kind of rest. Um, as you look at this series, one thing that I love that has stood out to me, aside from what we talked about with Anthony Edwards and how he's been kind of maybe slightly anointed too soon and kind of put up on
Hmm.
that pedestal before having to actually prove himself on the stage. Karl-Anthony Towns, greatest shooting big man of all time, could not be more of a fraud. How are you going to show up in Dallas with the guy you're trying to infringe upon his branding essentially, and
Hmm.
go into his house and go 0 of 8 from 3, 3 of 21 in the series from 3, and still with a straight face act like you're the greatest shooting big man of all time, dude? The comparison I saw that I liked best, I don't remember exactly who said it. Shay Sharpton, something maybe on Twitter, talking about like
Shannon Sharp.
he couldn't throw a marble into the Grand Canyon from the ledge. Essentially, like that's how he's shooting threes right now.
That sounds like a Shannon Sharp ism right there.
But going from that, it's like it's more than that. I told you, like in games 2 and 3, him just deciding in his mind it's cat time. He's killing them when he does it. He's taking bad shots. He's rushing shots, and it's like I'm to the point as a Mavericks fan. I'm watching him take these shots. I'm like, good. Go for it. Shoot it. Shoot it.
Exactly.
Like, don't give the ball to Anthony Edwards. Don't give the
Yeah.
ball to Naz Reid. He's actually lighting it up
Exactly.
against us. By all
Exactly.
means, convince yourself this is your moment. That's what I
Yeah.
said. He has not accepted that he is not the guy for Minnesota anymore. He still thinks that, like,
Yeah.
at best, or at least I should say, he's at least their Luka or their Kyrie to Luka. And he's like, oh, even platform. Well, he had his turn. Now this is my turn. This is my moment now. And twice
Yeah.
now in back-to-back games, he has shot them in the foot in a late charge situation. I'm just like, good, go for it. You're a fraud anyway. Like, I mean, I'm not saying you're a bad player, but I've never got, like, as much as I talked about like being a little slow to the Anthony Edwards hype, I've never really understood the hype about Cat, because this new wave of guys just seems like they're built on self-branding that they don't have to actually back up. It's the
Back up
same
anything.
thing.
He's won a couple of 3-point. I don't know if it's a
3-point
couple.
contest. Yeah, Dirk's got one
Yeah, yeah,
too.
and that's when, and I guess that's what he used to brand himself as. Or I think at a point in time, he was like, thought he had percentage wise the highest percentage of a center shooting threes or something like that. But back in, that's like Luka. I mean, not Luka. Dirk never really shot that much. I think Dirk probably was shot 2 or 3 at most a game,
Yeah.
especially in his prime. But I guess where that saying baffled me, back when he originally said it, because it's been some years ago, is like, dude, you don't even operate in the in between at all.
Yep.
He barely does. It's just shooting threes. So congrats. However, like it's hard. It's not hard to say. because kids do it nowadays. They need to draw attention to themselves because it can be very beneficial, whatever, especially being in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But I mean, slow your roll, my guy. Like slow your roll. It's such a detriment to the team. Him and I don't want to
See, I still
Rudy.
remember the play-in tournament thing. Him and Pat Bev.
Yeah, I actually understand that.
I
That to
I
me,
don't.
celebrate getting to the playoffs. I mean, we can't sit here and say that the playoffs don't or playoffs mean something, and then when a team who hasn't been there in how many years finally makes it,
And
like
gets
that's
beat in
something to
five.
freaking say. Yeah, that's fine. But when the Mavericks finally went to the playoffs in 2000, what was it, 2000 or 2001?
Uh-huh.
I'm sure it was like a big deal for Dallas people. And when they eventually clinched the first round against the
Sure.
Utah Jazz, like that's like
When you win, showing up's
yeah, when you
nice.
win.
Standing on the scores table when you get eliminated is going to look like a clown move every time. You can't tell me otherwise.
You're looking at it with hindsight.
Taking
To
off
me,
the no, I thought it was a clown thing at the time. Taking off the jersey and like crying into your hand, like just as you got beat in five. Like, cool, man, you
hold
got
on,
there.
hold on to extra context. I think they beat the Clippers.
Uh huh.
Pat Bev was let go by the Clippers, so it meant more to him, and he was
Okay.
somebody that
So the crying in the
that.
hand has some measure of not quite
Yeah,
as bad. The whole thing to me just always looks soft, and so like I'm happy for Minnesota and what they've got going now. I'm sure that's a fond memory for them, but it's one of those things where it's like in my mind I always associated Cat with like
yeah.
that
No. Don't get me
mentality,
wrong.
and
Don't
like
get me.
it feels in line with what we see even now from him as he claims
Yeah,
to be
don't get me
taking.
wrong. Cat's brand is weird and kind of goofy.
Yeah,
If you say definitely like the voice change and whatever, like
yeah,
gotta go get it. We gotta go get it, and then you see him and everything. He's like, oh, for sure. You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's like, that whole branding of his is goofy. Um, but I can never really fault a team from hitting huge milestones, especially for a team that doesn't traditionally get it. Mind you, where we're coming from. We're coming from, I think the second most winningest team since 2000,
Yeah.
only behind the Spurs. Like 50 wins in the 2000s was like, duh. Like if we made the playoffs was routine for us during Dirk's heyday. We never really and our worst moments post Dirk. How long did I even last? We didn't even it didn't even last that long. So post championship, we probably had what 3 years of just right. Minnesota had like how many years? Damn near like the
Since
Mavericks
Garnett
90s
left.
twice over. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we went through something like that, because the Mavericks never really have gone through anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the 80s we were pretty good. 88 we went to the Western Conference Championships.
Right.
Western Conference Finals.
Lost in 7.
Yeah. 90s was terrible. So we had a decade of just utter trash. Well, even we had the utter trash, but at least we had some highs with the 3Js and eventually getting Dirk.
Yeah.
But then 2000s came and it was just like, 50 wins was clockwork.
Sure. 12
You know what I
12 straight
mean?
years
And-
or whatever it was.
So
11,
exactly,
12.
yeah, it was clock, and playoffs was clockwork. Like we were getting disappointed if we lost in the first round. Like these motherfuckers can't do anything.
Sure.
Now back before Luka, we were like, please let's get into the playoffs. So I'm not gonna fault anyway.
I think the way I view it is craft that scenario, but have Luka being the one crying in that case. Is Luka going to be viewed in a halfway positive light or whatever, like Pat Bev was able to, or even put him
Oh,
in Cat's role?
I'll give you a good equivalent to that. When Germany qualified for the Olympics,
Uh-huh.
Dirk was
Carrying the flag, crying. You talking about the Olympic opening ceremony? That's because he was carrying the flag for his country.
But hold on. They just got to the tournament. Did they win the tournament?
I still think, yeah, okay. I see somewhat where you're going with it.
Yeah.
I think country is a different thing than if it's
Country definitely is
an NBA team.
it's a different thing. Yeah.
It's not
But
like
for some of
it's not like
these
some of
guys,
these guys
that's
were there.
yeah, for some of these guys, that's the almost the equivalent of, you know,
Yeah,
carrying a country on your back and finally getting them
fair
to
point. But
yeah.
anyway,
I
we're off
would
in the wilderness a little bit here.
yeah. Sorry, we're just excited. I love talking basketball.
So the defense down the stretch for Dallas, like I said, you closed the game on a 13-3 run. You held them to one field goal in the final 5 minutes, and that's a 15 seconds left layup basically by Ant. So phenomenal defense down the stretch. You had Luka and Kyrie combining for 21 of their 66 points in the fourth quarter. Both of them just hitting high degree difficulty shots. They are the first duo in NBA history to have three separate games where they both scored 30 plus points. And so the first backcourt duo, I should say, the first backcourt duo in NBA history to have 3 games with both of them having at least 30 plus. That's impressive. I don't know. Like Van Gundy kept saying, the most skilled offensive backcourt ever. There's context for why that's a very viable, accurate thing. It's also kind of one of those things that's just really hard to quantify, just because the modern era is so different of a game. But it's still fair to say they're doing things that's never been done. And the fact that you got not one but 2 of these guys capable of doing this is just incredible. So there's nothing you can do. If you're Minnesota, there is realistically nothing you can do to counteract like this. I don't know how they could play this game any better. Like, they're the best defense in the NBA, yet in this game, Dallas shot 60% on 2-point attempts, 24 of 40, and 50% from 3, 14 of 28. Like, everything's cooking. It's not just Luka and Kai picking them apart. Like, Dallas is systematically picking them apart. And for that, Kidd and the coaching staff deserve a lot of credit. I've been very critical of Kidd numerous times in the last couple of years. But you gotta say, like, he's hitting a stride right now with his coaching. Like, his adjustments midway through that Thunder series and then just where we've carried to today is just like, he's hitting all the right buttons.
The decision to play Jaden Hardy has been big time. Yeah, has been big time. And to your point too, Minnesota, I think we've seen almost essentially everything, every kind of adjustment they can kind of do.
Yeah.
Right. So because they even went with taking Ant off of Kai, sticking him on a not so involved offensive player, just so they can try to save his legs for the final push, and that didn't work out as well as they thought. So I'm the type of person that when the Mavericks are winning or when they lose, essentially, is the way they lost or the way they won, is it sustainable? And both times in the rounds before, we saw, the Clippers, we saw Thunder, they were shot like 50, 60% from 3.
Yep.
They completely just went lights out. And my question was, can they keep on doing that? I remember I was on a family group chat and, people were saying, I think, this might go game 7 or this might go to 7 games or whatever. And I was just like, let me see the Clippers beat us not shooting over 50% from 3. And they never did it. They never did it when they haven't beat us. Thunder were pretty much the same way. Like when someone wasn't having such an outlandish game, or a terrible game on the Mavericks end in terms of free throws missed in game 4.
Yep.
And you still end up losing. You would still only lose by freaking 3-4 points. It's like if Mavericks shot 60% from free throw, we would have won that game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it has to be like a terrible collapse on the Mavericks end, or, a heater of a game from the other team.
Yeah.
Anything close to the average, it seems to me like the Mavericks are winning for the most part.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm very excited about, because that really hasn't been the case.
Yeah. Check this stat here. This is for the series, and I saw you actually retweeted this, so you know where I'm going with it. Through 3 games in the series, Luka and Kyrie have 181 points on 63 of 128. That's 49.2% overall, including 20 of 48 from 3. That is 41.6%. Compare that for the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns are a combined 111 points on 37 of 110, 33.6%, and 10 of 43 from 3, 23.3%. Your Jacks are better. What is that dumbass phrase? Your Jacks are better than their Joes, which sounds like the oldest 1950s white guy expression. So it's basically what it is. They can't hang with you in this right now. Like, again, I think Edwards is going to be an incredibly special player. I do see that he's passing the eye test, but he's being elevated to that stage, at least in terms of media circles, too early. And I just never feel like Cat has been that guy. If Cat was your third option, dude, I'd feel pretty good. But he's got to know he's the third option. He can't keep trying to call Catman time and jacking up threes in the final minutes when he's 0 of 7 in the game. Dirk's too humble and modest, but I feel like if you trained a camera just on Dirk's face the entire game, every time Cat is missing a 3, there's got to be at least a small smirk, just a tug at the corner of his mouth, just kind of like a greatest shooting big man.
Or shaking of the head like what were you thinking? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Just absolutely wild. Works to your advantage. Oh man.
Right. Dare we look forward to NBA Finals, or are we
No. I will
not
not preview anything until then. I will take a victory lap at the dumbasses who were wrong about things. You got Kyle Kuzma previously talking about like, I've been on a championship team. I know what it takes and all this. And, just didn't feel like the parts were there talking about like why he rejected the trade to the Mavericks before you set up then the PJ Washington move. Is like, okay, thanks, man. You saved us. Or you got Spencer Dinwiddie explaining why he took the Lakers instead. Like, all right, man, tell me how you feel today. Of course, you had the Daily News in New York after the Kai trade saying like, "Who's your headache now?" Like, oh no, we'll take it. The only headache we're getting from this is a hangover from the victory parade. That's what I'm feeling. Like, this is very different here. So, here's another cool thing too. I'm just running through my notes here as we start to get into this wrap up. Luka Doncic played his 43rd career playoff game last night. He has 1,336 points, 400 rebounds, and 355 assists. No one else has hit all 3 of those totals in their first 43 playoff games. If you drop the qualifiers to 1,100 points, 300 rebounds, and 300 assists, the entire list becomes Luka, LeBron, Oscar Robertson.
Jesus Christ.
He is blowing past dudes, and yet he doesn't get he's finally starting to get people to notice. Even the first time through, because they went down 0-3 in that series, people, as soon as they started to like, crap, we're gonna have to talk about Luka and the Mavericks. Oh, okay, good. They're getting humbled. Now we can go back to pretending that didn't happen. And we're never gonna talk about it like it happened unless we just say like that time Steph embarrassed him or some shit. Now they're begrudgingly having to acknowledge it. And it's like, dude, he has been him. You just haven't been paying attention. And it's because of your own objectives and your own narratives and agendas and all of that. He has been doing this whole time.
Eyes set on LA. So they're having their eyes set on LA, looking at them, giving them props for stuff that they haven't done.
Yeah.
Calling them the dark horses and stuff like that. And it's like,
I see people saying the only reason the Wolves are here is because we got to praise the Lakers for wearing out Denver in the first round. In the first round, it was a 6-game series, was it not? And it should have been a 5-game series, right? Like, why are we talking about like 6 games wearing out the champs? Like
I thought that was 5 games. It was 5 games.
It was 5? Even worse.
Yeah.
It should have been a sweep, but it was 5. Yeah. Even worse. Yeah. I saw people legitimately trying to make that argument, saying like, that's the only reason the Wolves were able to get him in the second round, because this Wolves team is not better than Denver. Maybe Denver's just not as like, strong as they were last year. You can say that. That's a different conversation, but that's at least a fair conversation.
That was a conversation I was having at the start of the season. It was like, Denver is definitely not as strong as they were at the end of last year. And that tends to happen when you win a championship. Price goes up for a lot of players, a lot of key players.
Our coaching staff will get poached again this summer no matter what happens. Happened last time.
Derek Jones is probably going to sign a good contract, hopefully with the Mavericks, but if not, deservedly somewhere else.
Yep.
That's what tends to happen when key role players step up.
Yep. Check this another one here. This one from Josh Eberly. Players 25 and under in the 3-point era to average 31, 9, and 8 in a playoff series. Just Luka. 38 and 8. Just Luka. 37 and 7. Just Luka. 28, 7 and 7. Luka and LeBron. Like. That's the metric here that you look at, is you have to keep trying to figure out how to quantify this stuff. His series against the Thunder, people were saying like the worst series of his playoff career. What was it, like 29, 8 and 7?
Yeah.
Like by the end, it was rough at the early going, but he still pulled up to a nearly 30-point. Like if that's the bar for his worst, and don't get me wrong, I understand his shooting percentages, even though those did creep up to at least respectable by the end. I understand there were some of those games that were rougher, but it's like, that's the bar at which he operates, and that would be the absolute ceiling for most any other of these guys that they're wanting to anoint over him. It's an expansion of the Jason Tatum conversation, like comparing Luka versus Tatum. It's just now that we're trying to append it to other guys, like, oh, let's put Booker in that conversation. Oh, let's put Trae Young in that conversation. Anthony Edwards in that conversation. None of them are on the same tier. This is a one-of-one situation, or at best a one of 2 or 3 if you're going to expand it to like what LeBron's ceiling peak in terms of total stat packing, the box score and everything. Yeah. It's just something that is so bizarrely dismissed. And I think it's because it came. You can't even say because it came with the hype, because LeBron had the hype. I had all the hype in the world coming in. It's almost like that one was the one that they were willing to accept, and then it lived up to it. And so they're like, see, perfect. But then this one, they're European player? Nah.
I have theories.
Okay.
Yeah, the European side definitely is a big reason, I would say.
Yeah.
Because we're in this time in the NBA. It was a very crucial time in the NBA because we are about to retire one of the faces. And maybe in their minds okay, so we were about to lose one of the faces, and then now the media knows that they have the power to, formulate whatever opinions that they want. So they kind of are trying to mold, opinions to, I guess, their liking. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to see Europeans be as successful or more successful than any U.S. player. So they're looking for essentially the great U.S. hope,
right?
Anywhere they can, and anywhere they can find, and because it's like, we're like, time is ticking on LeBron. Like, we probably got 2 years of LeBron even just being here. You know what I mean?
Yep, here in Dallas, NBA. That's where it's going.
Yeah, exactly.
Because his agent let slip that he is going to enter free agency.
Yeah, because if you knew, like after Jordan left, the NBA did take a major hit because there wasn't that, Kobe wasn't fully realized yet. There was no other stars that people could rally behind.
Sure.
And they're trying to make sure that it doesn't happen, but at the same time, they're just instead of letting the players essentially show up themselves and show themselves to be the greatness that they are. It was almost like, we can't have a European be the face of the league. So let's, Jason Tatum,
right.
He's the guy, even though he's like at multiple times in his career, he's not even viewed as the best player on his team. And then Edwards, who shows you a glimpse of something, is like, it's Ant. He's the next guy. He's Michael Jordan 2.0. And it's like, he's 22. He still has a lot to figure out,
Right.
So
it's also,
I think that's a major reason why they're doing it.
I think it's also in part that the game is just generational thing. As we're getting shorter and shorter attention spans, we're evolving towards a highlights driven culture.
Yeah.
Less about watching actual games, more about watching the shortest condensed highlight package to explain the game possible. And explosive, exciting plays like Anthony Edwards' dunk is going to generate a lot more traction than Luka putting a guy in jail and hitting a fall away shot. Don't get me wrong, Luka has unbelievable plays all the time. He's made them so routine, but it's not the kind of athleticism that the game has been built on before. And so as this idea of like bigger, stronger, faster kind of comes in when you have a lot of these European guys that are crafty and, you know, more fundamentally driven, and like just their control and everything is just a totally different thing. It's almost like, it's not a different flavor of ice cream, but it's almost like a different thing. It's like going from like Italian ice to like that. It's just like, they're like, what do I do with this? Like, it's nice, but like, what is this? I just wanted vanilla. Or maybe they're saying, yeah, like, I don't know, man. It's a weird thing. There's levels to it, I'm sure. Some of which are nefarious, some of which are unconscious, but it's just like, I don't know. You just have to accept the fact that like at this point, the majority of the best players in the league are foreign-born players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the best players. Sorry, most of the best players are from the U.S. The top of the best players are mostly European.
Yeah.
So that's where I mean, it seems like, oh, Europe is taking over. It's like, oh, there's like, you know, 4 different people from 4 different countries other than U.S. are at the top of the food chain as of right now, which is a good thing. Like this is what tends to happen. You know, don't blame us. Blame the dream team. They're the one who inspired so many people to pick up a basketball from around the world.
Yep.
So this is what tends to happen. And you know, obviously, you know, for the WNBAs, as you know, as successful as they've been this year, now with the you know, with the hype of Caitlin Clark and you know, all these other Angel Reese and all these other, this is going to drive a lot more people, a lot more girls to pick up at basketball, thus getting eventually getting more talent pool into your league. Now, what the league does with that is up to them.
Sure,
but that's just going to mean more, better basketball.
Yep,
that's what happens with every sport.
Yeah,
with every sport, that's the life cycle.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So we talked about the closing here for Dallas. This was a cool stat I saw from what was this Anchorage Man on Twitter. It's always an interesting place to kind of follow some stuff. So Dallas is 3-0, obviously, in the Western Conference Finals with a total margin of plus 13. In the series, fourth quarter, semi-contested, which means a defender within 4 to 6 feet of space. 33 to 34% shot on average. So like that's the average with that kind of spacing. Dallas is 7 for 9 with all attempts being by Luka and Kyrie. Minnesota, meanwhile, in those same scenarios, is 3 of 13, 6 different guys with attempts. So very, very telling advanced stat there. Again, the degree of difficulty, you got 2 guys that can do that and just turn it on and just close it out. But I also want to throw some love to PJ Washington in game 2, or was it game 1? Game 1, he had that huge corner 3 in a game where nobody for Dallas could seemingly hit a 3. I know Luka hit a couple, but he hit the 3 that put him up for good, 104-102 with 1:56 left, and then he had a big 3 last night as well that put him up for good as well, 107-104. That was with like 3 minutes 40 seconds left, something like that. It was under 4 minutes.
I wish we can look up.
And the free throws to close out the Thunder series. So he's been a late game performer. I love that.
Yeah, I wish someone out there in Mavs Twitter, can someone please research PJ Washington 3-point percentage in crunch time?
Yep.
I feel like he's been, you know, despite how he's been showing, you know, the 3 quarters before, or the half the fourth quarter, the other 3 quarters, for some reason, that corner shot in crunch time, I feel very comfortable with him shooting it.
Yep.
And he's come through on multiple occasions.
For sure.
And so I'm very, very thankful for PJ Washington being on this team.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I'm sure he is too, because he can always be back in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. So overall for this game, you got Luka and Kyrie both going for 33 apiece. Kai was 12 of 20, Luka 10 of 20, 5 of 11 from 3 for Luka, 3 of 6 for Kai. Kai still missed a couple free throws, so did Luka. Luka was 8 of 10, Kai 6 of 8. Irving also had a steal in there, and Luka had 5 steals. And I feel like he got robbed of a couple others too, where he got called for a foul. I loved when they tried to have Gobert post him up. He picks his pocket as he does the spin, and then Luka just glares at the Wolves bench like, "How dare you try me?"
He's like,
with Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, he looked like someone get your man's like.
Yeah, and he had a block too. Luka filling up the stat sheet there. Incredible stuff. PJ Washington 16 and 8, 5 of 10 shooting, 2 of 6 from 3. There. So again, one of those hits being a really big one, being only 1 of 5 before that hit. So dude's fearless, and that's the best thing you can ask for. Derek Jones Jr. did all his damage early, but he had 11 points. I think at the end of the first quarter, he was your leading scorer. So doing work there. Obviously, Gafford closing strong, ended up with 3 huge blocks in this game. A bit shaky at times, to be honest. And part of that was foul trouble. Part of that was him just having to try and fill the void and do what Lively does, but not being as capable of doing it. Lively is like quarterbacking the back end of your defense. He's legitimately already living up to, if I don't know if I sent it to you, the clip where he's calling out the rotations, how vocal he is calling out the rotations for the Mavericks defense is like, holy crap, that's just Tyson. Like, that's just Tyson 2.0. Incredible stuff. Gafford,
you're talking about Lively doing that, right?
Yes. I'm saying for Gafford having to step in and try and replace that.
Yeah, he was like yelling at the top of his lungs, right?
Yes.
I've seen that. I think I've seen that clip. Yeah, that was freaking crazy.
A lot of stuff like that. But Gafford still gets the major blocks, swats, Cat going at the basket, gets another couple of good contests, got Conley in a big moment, and then obviously hits the thunderous and one hoop. By the way, dirty as shit play from Rudy Gobert just shoving him. That was like Chris Paul shoving Giannis in the finals. That was almost a little bit of Mother's Day Massacre, the Andrew Bynum hit on Barea. It's not Barea, it's big ass Daniel Gafford. And so it didn't get the attention. But like if that was PJ or Derek Jones Jr., that could have been a bad fall. And that's not to say they're small guys, but just like if it was someone not as big as Gafford, that could have been a really ugly fall. And we should be having a different conversation that I feel like we're not, only because it's Gafford. But that's one of those moments where I'm like, there's a reason so much of the league just hates Rudy Gobert, isn't there? It's not just the touching the microphones thing during the start of a pandemic. Like that didn't help his image, but like I
felt like there was animosity even before that.
Yeah,
with a lot of players.
Yep. So. No, for sure. There's something going on there with that, but
I wish I could get some details about that. Maybe.
Yeah.
I just need to be friends with an NBA basketball player. They're like, so why does everyone hate Rudy Gobert? No, let me tell you a story.
Gather around, youngins. Like, how old are we talking about this conversation? So Minnesota shot 51% from the field, but only 30% from 3. So the 3-point shooting, I said going into the West Finals, they weren't a great 3-point shooting team. Naz Reid's really the only thing that's giving them that lift. They've regressed. Like those first 2 games they shot, particularly game 1, the lights out. They've regressed back to the mean. You talked about sustainability of what they're doing. They're not sustainable with that. They've crashed back down to earth. Dallas, meanwhile, is asserting themselves. They were 56% from the field, 50% from 3. Again, good at the line, 26 of 31. Like, fantastic. I had a little bit of frustration, again, with Anthony Edwards, the young player, kind of deflecting, asked about the difference in the game. He's like, well, they shot 31 free throws. We shot 17. Let's talk about like attacking the basket. Let's talk about like, are you saying that like you guys were going to the basket and not getting foul calls? Like it was one-sided officiating? Because I feel like far from a perfectly officiated game, but I feel like there were 5-6 calls, including calls in the crunch time that went against Dallas. Like Luka getting called for the travel. I don't know that was necessarily a travel. Like it's frame perfect, and I assure you Tony Brothers did not have the perspective from where he was standing to see if Luka's feet touched in time, like before the ball left.
I know this didn't happen in game 3 too, but this is one thing that I always wanted to point out, and I didn't have the opportunity to point out after game 2, but they're talking about that Kyrie foul on McDaniels, right? It's kind of funny, and maybe because the stage it happened on, that's why there's so much emphasis on it now, but that play happens all the time.
Yep.
All the time in the NBA. And it's almost like refs miss fouls, and they do make up. Like it should be a known thing that refs make up calls. They make up calls, right?
Yeah.
If you get foul If you get fouled and if the ref didn't call it and it goes out of bounds, they're just gonna give you the ball. And it's happened many times against the Mavericks. That's why I didn't have too much of a problem with it. I acknowledge that, yeah, it was a foul. And I honestly wouldn't mind. I wouldn't have mind if they would have just said, despite the replay, still Wolves ball.
Yeah.
But it happened so many times where, the Mavericks, we got fouled, ball goes out of bounds. The ref just says, you know what, Mavericks ball. And the other team just goes, review it. And it's like, yeah, they fouled us, but because we touched the ball last and they can't go back and change the foul call, and then, whatever. Like they've been doing that since the regular season, since the playoffs, whatever. It's happened many times. I don't know why people are acting like as if that's such a game-changing play.
Yeah.
It was at the time, don't get me wrong, but it happens. It happens almost regularly.
Yep.
Almost every game. So,
yep.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how Dallas is able to handle Tuesday night's game 4. I'd rather not even have to go back to Minnesota. I think they need to, as much as game 4 makes me wonder, it was great getting game 3 without Lively, having to play 2.5 quarters without him. But because he only played 9 minutes, but he was he was filling up the stat sheet even in that time. He had 6 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, 3 of 3 from the field, had a block already swatting Anthony Edwards. That was nice. Was having a real impact for Dallas in that. But I still feel like more likely than not, you need to rest him. Even if you feel like he could go, I would rest him. If it was 2-1, maybe I feel a little bit more pressed, but 3-0, as much as I want to win in 4, I think you need to give him that time to maximize his, limit the chance of him having further re-aggravation of the injury or worse, and 2, just giving him the time to rest before.
Because we're only a day removed. Yeah, so that rest might be important.
Yeah, I mean, they said he's walking around gingerly at shoot around this morning, so I'm like, I don't mess with that at all. So I'll be curious to see how Dallas responds in that. I'm really not. I know some people have asked about like, oh, my thoughts on like a Celtics series. Like, I'm not talking about it. I will not. I've been burned too many times in the past trying to like think ahead to like what the next round
Eric,
might look like.
Different now, man. It's different.
I know. I understand, but I've been burned too many times to risk it again.
We got a sustainable defense, not just like a hot defense.
Sure.
Like 22. Yeah, like 22, we were hot defensively, but essentially that whole team came back and we were outright crap.
Yeah.
The next year defensively. So
right. So we'll have to see. But like again, looking at this, Minnesota, I read somewhere through like 8 different types of coverage at Dallas guarding the pick and rolls thing, and Luka picked it all apart. Kai picked a lot of it apart as well. Even when they were calling the right thing, seeing it coming and just moving before they could even like hit him with the blitz or something like that. That Kai step back, saw the blitz coming, and just literally used his speed to like zip around them, get to the baseline, and hit that step back over Cat. Just incredible stuff. So when you got that going on, and you have Anthony Edwards finally stepping up and having a more vintage performance for him. How many points did Cat end up with? We know his 3-point shooting,
like 14 or something like that.
Yeah, no, he had. You're right. Yeah. 14 and 11 for Cat, but only 5 of 18 shooting. Yeah, so you got all that. With that, you have Naz Reid, who's been great for them, 14 points as well. Only 1 of 5 from 3, though. That's kind of wild in that after going initially 7 of 8 before missing that game winner would be at the buzzer.
That's what 3-point.
But you got that with them shooting over 50% from the field, having fewer turnovers than Dallas, more assists, more rebounds as well. It's wild. Like, it's wild to be like, okay, now how do you respond? The best thing you got going for you at this point is the Lively thing. That if you're Minnesota, that is like the one thing where you're like, well, at least Lively's probably not going to be playing, or if he is, he's not going to be his normal disruptive self.
Did you mention less turnovers too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you look at this on paper, and aside from the 3-point shooting, you would think like, oh, this was it, right? No, because Anthony Edwards and Cat combined for how many points they have in the fourth quarter? It was like 4 points combined between them in the fourth quarter. Like, they had their run in the third quarter. Dallas said, that's cute. Then Luka and Kai went off for 21 in the fourth, and the two of them combined for like 4-8 or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it's just the difference. It's the guys that are right there, that it is their moment, it is their stage, and they're showing up and proving why that is the case. And it's the guy that isn't there, really doesn't have the stake there. I'm talking about Cat, and the guy who's there a little early, and we'll see where he's at. But I do feel like, depending on what they are able to continue building around him, I like what they got. He could be there again in the future and be more prepared for the stage. So, yeah, this will be a good one. Hopefully, Dallas can get the job done Tuesday night, because I want some rest for these guys. This team has fought hard, and the great thing is, worrying about rest versus rust, this team's built on its defense. This team's built on its grit and resilience. It's not a team that has to live and die by the three. And so, even if you come out a little bit flat from three, you've shown all since the trade deadline you can win games shooting less than 34% as a team from three and just getting it done in the paint and in your defense. So that travels all the time. That's always ready to go.
That's how I would build my team if I was a GM.
Yup. So any closing comments you got, or anything you want to add?
Man, I'm excited. Good times are afoot. Hopefully we close it out game 4, just like you said. Tuesday night, I'm going to be at a bar amongst my fellow Mavs fans, celebrating, high-fiving, the good stuff. Trying to make memories out of this playoff run so I can look back with fondness. But I have nothing other than that.
Okay.
Enjoy your Memorial Day, people.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you all for watching. Leave a comment below, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace.